From as far back as Lily could remember, her entire world revolved around her older sister, Amber. It wasn't simply that Amber was the firstborn. It was as if her very existence eclipsed Lily's. Their parents, Linda and George, treated Amber like a rare gem, fragile, precious, deserving of constant admiration. And Lily was left perpetually in her shadow. Everything in their house was about maintaining Amber's happiness and preserving her golden child status, no matter the cost to Lily. At birthdays, even when it was supposed to be Lily's day, the cake was always chocolate fudge, because Amber liked chocolate fudge. Lily hated chocolate fudge. Her parents pretended they didn't know, smiling as they cut slices for everyone while Lily forced herself to swallow the sweet she despised. Gifts followed the same pattern. Amber received expensive or thoughtful presents, while Lily got cheaper items or duplicates of what Amber owned, as if her parents were simply ticking off a box rather than celebrating her individuality. At family outings, it was always Amber's choice where they'd go. Even trips that were promised to be Lily's day would be quietly redirected toward activities Amber enjoyed. If Lily protested, her parents accused her of being selfish or difficult. She learned quickly that keeping silent was less painful than fighting a losing battle. As the girls grew older, the divide grew sharper. Amber became more entitled and dismissive, treating Lily like a convenient scapegoat or punching bag. If Amber wanted a chore done, she'd push it off on Lily and frame it as a favor. If something went wrong, Amber would blame Lily. Their parents inevitably believed Amber, doling out punishment to Lily even in the face of clear evidence. Meanwhile, when Lily tried to stand up for herself or present proof that Amber was lying, her parents dismissed her as dramatic or disrespectful. School offered Lily brief reprieves. Unlike Amber, she had a natural talent for academics and a calm, friendly personality that earned her friends. Unfortunately, Amber noticed. Seeing Lily find happiness outside the family home sparked a new wave of resentment. Amber spread rumors about Lily, accusing her of being mean or manipulative. She'd tell their parents that Lily's friends were bad influences, prompting George and Linda to ban Lily from hanging out with anyone outside of school hours. "Why can't you just stay home and be like your sister?" they'd ask, not realizing, or not caring, that Amber spent most of her time isolating herself because no one could stand her mean-spirited behavior. What saved Lily from total isolation was her extended family. Many of her cousins lived nearby, and she'd sneak in moments of laughter and fun with them during family gatherings. But even there, Amber's shadow loomed. Lily accidentally let it slip to her cousins one day that she wasn't allowed to have friends because Amber had none. The news spread to the adults, leading to a massive confrontation with Lily's parents, who were livid and accused her of lying. She was grounded for a month, but it was almost worth it because afterward, she gained a tiny sliver of freedom. Even then, Lily learned an important lesson. In her parents' eyes, her entire worth was measured only in how well she could keep Amber content, and she quietly vowed that someday she'd escape the prison of being the other sister. By the time Lily and Amber were teenagers, the gap between them had become an uncrossable chasm. Amber had started high school with a few friends clinging to her, but her entitled attitude eventually drove everyone away. It wasn't entirely clear to Lily whether Amber's friends moved away, grew tired of her manipulative ways, or simply realized how exhausting it was to orbit around someone who thought the world owed her devotion. Either way, Amber became increasingly isolated and took her bitterness out on Lily. At first, Amber's attacks were subtle, snide remarks, rolling her eyes whenever Lily spoke. But once Amber noticed Lily had become quite popular at school, it turned vicious. Lily wasn't the queen bee type, but she was smart, kind, and easy to talk to. Teachers praised her work ethic. Classmates liked including her in group projects and weekend plans. That was enough to set Amber's jealousy ablaze. Suddenly, Amber began inventing elaborate lies about Lily and her friends. She'd whisper to George and Linda that Lily's friends were stealing, drinking, or plotting to get Lily into trouble. Her parents swallowed every word. Overnight, Lily found herself under house arrest, forbidden to hang out with anyone because, as her parents put it, Amber knows better than you. Why can't you just stay home like your sister and enjoy family time? The phrase, "Why can't you be like your sister?" became the chorus of Lily's life. It didn't matter that Amber barely left the house because she'd alienated everyone around her. It didn't matter that Lily's grades were consistently good, while Amber's were middling at best. Her parents kept insisting Amber was the mature one, and used any opportunity to belittle Lily's judgment. Lily's only escape came from her extended family. Her cousins, a lively bunch of different ages, accepted her without question. During family gatherings, they invited her along for movies, shopping trips, or just to hang out. But one afternoon, at a family barbecue, Lily let the truth slip. When asked why she seemed so sad, she admitted bluntly and tearfully that she wasn't allowed to have friends because Amber didn't have any. Her words caused a ripple effect. The adults pulled George and Linda aside and tore into them for how they were treating Lily. When they returned home, her parents accused Lily of lying and humiliating the family. She was grounded for a month, but even that punishment couldn't erase what had happened. The incident forced George and Linda to loosen their iron grip just a fraction. Lily could sometimes go out with cousins again, though she still had to endure lectures about how she couldn't be trusted and had embarrassed them. Despite the temporary victory, Amber never forgave Lily for exposing her social failures to the family. She grew more vindictive. Even after switching schools, presumably to avoid further embarrassment, Amber carried her hostility toward Lily into the new chapter of her life. Whenever Amber made new friends, she invited them over, not to introduce them to Lily, but so they could gang up on her. They'd tease her looks, mock her clothes, and laugh about how pathetic she was. George and Linda would brush it off as harmless sibling teasing. Through it all, Lily learned to keep her guard up. She stopped bringing friends home altogether. She stopped talking about her life. Every piece of herself she shared seemed to be used against her. Yet deep inside, she nurtured a silent fire, a determination to carve out a life where Amber and her parents could no longer dictate her happiness. By the time Lily was 16, she was craving some kind of affection that wasn't tainted by manipulation or resentment. So when a quiet, sweet boy named Ethan asked her out, she cautiously agreed. She kept the relationship hidden for weeks, terrified of what Amber might do if she found out. But secrets in Lily's family rarely stayed buried for long. Eventually, George and Linda insisted on meeting Ethan. Lily was scared, but Ethan, polite and well-mannered, tried to make a good impression. For a few brief minutes, everything seemed almost normal, until Amber slinked into the room. She was wearing a tank top far too small, batting her eyelashes, and practically draping herself over Ethan as she whispered how Lily was so mean and not right for him. Ethan quickly pulled away and later confessed everything to Lily, clearly uncomfortable. Amber, however, spun a different story to their parents. She claimed Ethan had tried to flirt with her and that she, loyal and pure, had rejected him because she could never betray her sister. George and Linda didn't even hesitate. They forbade Lily from seeing Ethan ever again, scolding her for attracting the wrong kind of boys. Lily tried to argue her side, but it was useless. She wasn't just outnumbered. She was invisible. Ethan wasn't perfect, but Lily believed him. Part of her reasoning, she admitted, was petty. She knew Amber's attempts at flirting were laughable. Amber might have believed she was seductive, but Lily, skinny, awkward, and self-conscious as she was, couldn't imagine Ethan ever wanting Amber. Besides, she'd seen firsthand how her sister's seductive act was more cringe than captivating. Heartbroken but determined not to let Amber win, Lily tried dating again. She met another boy, Kevin, a few months later, but the same pattern repeated. Amber turned up her charm, accused Kevin of coming on to her, and again George and Linda believed Amber without question. Lily's protests fell on deaf ears. Her parents insisted that Lily simply had bad judgment in choosing men and banned her from dating altogether. After 2 failed relationships destroyed by her sister, Lily withdrew from romance entirely. By the time she was in her final years of high school, she'd become notorious for making out with boys but refusing to date them. She figured it was safer to keep things physical but shallow, nothing her sister could sink her claws into. Some classmates called her names for it, but Lily didn't care. As long as Amber and her parents never found out, it was worth it. Meanwhile, Amber paraded a boyfriend home for a short while, and George and Linda treated the guy like royalty. They gushed about how wonderful he was and pressured Lily to find someone like him. But then, just as quickly, Amber's boyfriend vanished. Overnight, he transformed in her parents' narrative from the perfect gentleman to a manipulative monster who'd tricked poor Amber. Lily wasn't surprised. She suspected the guy had simply realized what he'd gotten himself into. Through it all, Lily's resentment festered. Amber continued to get more freedom, more spending money, and looser curfews, while Lily remained under tight restrictions. Her parents always claimed it was because Amber's older, but when Lily reached the same age, those privileges never came. Instead, George and Linda invented new excuses about how Lily couldn't be trusted because of her supposedly bad choices in friends and boys, choices that Amber herself had sabotaged at every turn. Every time Lily watched Amber breeze through life with no consequences, her determination grew. She swore to herself that one day, no one, not even Amber, would be able to steal her happiness again. By the time senior year rolled around, Lily was laser-focused on one goal: getting out. She'd learned the hard way that her parents would never treat her like an equal, and Amber would never stop trying to sabotage her life. So Lily decided that college would be her escape hatch, the one chance to start over and finally be free. Amber, meanwhile, barely scraped through high school. Every time she got a B on a test, George and Linda treated it like she'd won a Nobel Prize. Lily, on the other hand, consistently earned high grades, but was met with shrugs and offhand comments like, "Well, that's just expected from you." Her parents poured money and attention into Amber's future, boasting to anyone who would listen about how Amber was off to college, even though the school wasn't exactly prestigious and Amber had no scholarships. Amber left for college with fanfare, and for a moment, Lily felt hopeful that life might ease up. But her relief was short-lived. Amber came home every other weekend, and each visit sparked new problems. Things went missing from Lily's room: clothes, makeup, sometimes even cash. Other times, Amber would invent fresh lies to stir up drama. And despite being away at college, Amber still managed to keep Lily shackled under her influence. Then came the moment Lily had dreaded but also expected. One evening, her mom, Linda, sat her down for a serious talk. Linda explained that because they were paying for Amber's tuition, there wasn't any money left for Lily's college. The suggestion was clear. Lily should forget about higher education, get a job straight out of high school, and wait to see if the family could maybe afford to help her once Amber was finished. Oh, and if she wanted to stay living at home in the meantime, Lily would be expected to pay for rent, bills, and all her personal expenses. Lily felt numb. She'd suspected this would happen all along. Still, she calmly thanked her mother for being honest and said she understood. Linda seemed taken aback, as if she'd been hoping Lily would throw a tantrum so they'd have an excuse to paint her as ungrateful or difficult. A few days later, George tried the same conversation. Lily responded the same way: polite, emotionless, and detached. The truth was, she'd been preparing for this for years. While Amber was busy creating drama, Lily had poured her spare time into studying, applying for scholarships, and researching every option that could get her out. Her social life might have been small, but her determination was enormous. Eventually, all that hard work paid off. Lily earned a full-ride scholarship to a respectable university. It wasn't Ivy League or some elite medical or law school, but it was solid, and it offered her a lifeline. Knowing Amber and her parents would try to sabotage her, Lily decided to reveal her news strategically. She posted her scholarship announcement publicly on social media at the same time she told her family. She even thanked George and Linda in the Post for raising her to work hard, which forced them to pretend to be supportive, for a little while, at least. Predictably, Amber didn't take the news well. George and Linda's initial pride turned to caution. They pulled Lily aside and asked whether she was sure she wanted to go. After all, they said, Amber was struggling in college, and since Amber was supposedly smarter and more mature, they feared Lily would fail even worse. But for the first time, Lily refused to back down. She'd earned her way out, and nothing, not her parents' doubts nor Amber's resentment, was going to stop her from seizing the freedom she'd worked so hard to achieve. College was the first taste of freedom Lily had ever known. Away from her parents and Amber, she discovered who she was when she wasn't constantly tiptoeing around someone else's moods. It wasn't always easy. She still carried scars from her childhood, but she was finally building a life that belonged to her. And that's when she met Jake. Jake was the sort of person who left an impression in every room he entered. He was sharp, funny, and fiercely protective of people he cared about. Where Lily was quiet and cautious, he was bold and fearless. He had a lightning-fast wit, a keen sense of justice, and absolutely no tolerance for anyone's nonsense. It was the exact opposite of Lily's meek, conflict-avoiding ways, and it was precisely what drew her to him. At first, Lily worried Jake wouldn't understand how deeply tangled her family dynamics were. But Jake proved her wrong. He listened to every story, every humiliating detail about Amber's sabotage and her parents' favoritism. Rather than pitying Lily, he grew furious on her behalf. He often joked that he'd love to confront Amber directly and clap back so hard she'd spin. But Lily always waved him off, too afraid to stir up more chaos. Eventually, after a couple of years together, Jake proposed. He didn't do it with fireworks or a public spectacle, just a quiet moment at home, slipping the ring onto her finger and telling her he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. Lily, trembling, said yes. Neither of them particularly cared about having a lavish wedding. They were practical people who preferred the idea of saving money for an unforgettable honeymoon in Europe. Still, given that Lily's extended family was mostly concentrated in her hometown, and Jake's relatives were scattered across different states, they decided to hold the ceremony there for convenience. Once they announced their engagement, George and Linda immediately demanded to meet Jake. Lily was torn. Part of her wanted to say no. Another part, softened by years of distance, wondered if maybe her parents weren't so bad after all. Jake was having none of it. He insisted on meeting them, but alone. He had a plan. He even bought a high-quality recorder to secretly tape the conversation, just in case Amber tried her usual tricks. Jake was practically bouncing with excitement at the idea of catching them in some outrageous scheme. When he came back from that meeting, he was grinning from ear to ear. "Babe," he said breathlessly, "you are not going to believe what your family just tried to pull." Instead of the usual drama about Jake flirting with Amber, George and Linda had dropped a bombshell proposal. They told Jake they'd be willing to pay for Lily's wedding, on one condition: Amber would get to walk down the aisle first, in a wedding dress, in Lily's venue, with professional photos and her own cake. They claimed it was only fair since Amber, as the older sister, should have the experience of being a bride first, even if she wasn't the one getting married. Jake had nearly lost his mind with rage, but instead of exploding, he kept a straight face and told them he'd think about it to buy time. Then he ran back to Lily, practically shaking with both fury and delight at the perfect revenge scenario brewing in his head. That moment became the turning point. Lily realized her parents, and Amber, would never stop trying to make her life about someone else. And this time, with Jake by her side, she wasn't going to let them win. When Jake finished explaining what Lily's parents had demanded, that Amber should get to play bride at Lily's wedding, Lily sat there stunned, her mouth dry. She'd always known her parents favored Amber, but she hadn't believed they'd stoop this low. The thought that Amber would walk down Lily's aisle in a white dress, smiling for cameras, while Lily was left to stand aside, It was the most humiliating, rage-inducing thing Lily could imagine. At first, she was ready to cut them off entirely, but Jake wouldn't hear of it. "Oh no," he said, eyes sparkling. "They think they're pulling a fast one on us. We're going to flip the script." So they began plotting. Some of their early ideas were wild. Jake suggested giving George and Linda a fake venue address so Amber would show up at the wrong place. Another plan involved staging a fake ceremony just for Amber, complete with an actor posing as an officiant, before revealing the prank. But the logistics were complicated, and Jake's older brother, who was level-headed and wise, cautioned them that some of these ideas could get them sued or even arrested. Reluctantly, Lily and Jake settled on a more subtle strategy. They would pretend to agree to George and Linda's plan, but never actually let it happen. Instead, they'd hire security to keep Amber out of the venue on the big day, and meanwhile, they'd make the most of the situation. Jake went back to Lily's parents and pretended to be on their side. He told them that Lily might not accept Amber's aisle-walking plan if she found out, but that he, Jake, was willing to help them pull it off secretly. He painted Lily as neurotic, controlling, and suspicious, the kind of woman who'd check his phone and demand constant reassurance. It was the perfect lie because George and Linda already believed the worst of Lily. Lily, to her own surprise, found the deception hilarious. She even encouraged Jake to embellish the story, urging him to describe her as unstable if it helped sell the ruse. For someone who'd spent her life being called meek and spineless, it felt weirdly thrilling to play the villain in her parents' narrative. Over the following months, Jake became the middleman. George and Linda wanted input on everything, from the menu to the flowers to the color scheme. Jake used these moments to milk them for every extra dollar he could squeeze out of their budget. When they'd tour venues or caterers, Jake would intentionally pick the cheapest option. Then he'd sigh and tell Amber, "It's too bad we can't afford the fancy stuff, but Lily doesn't want to impose on your parents." Predictably, Amber would stomp her foot and insist that George and Linda pay for the most expensive choices. The same trick worked with flowers, photographers, and even the wedding dress. George and Linda kept stepping in to upgrade everything, determined that Amber's fake bride moment would look as luxurious as possible. They were pouring thousands into Lily's wedding, blissfully unaware that Lily and Jake never intended to let Amber anywhere near the ceremony. Amber, meanwhile, was giddy. She'd even suggested to Jake that if Lily resisted wearing the hideous dress George and Linda picked out for her, they could accidentally ruin Lily's real dress so she'd be forced to wear the family's choice. Jake pretended to agree, his face a picture of solemn conspiracy. Through it all, Lily and Jake were meticulous. Nothing about Amber's planned aisle walk was ever put in writing. They made sure no texts or emails could be used as proof. George and Linda were convinced Jake was helping them pull off the ultimate secret, when, in reality, he and Lily were orchestrating their downfall. And for the first time in Lily's life, she was excited not just for the wedding, but for the showdown she and Jake were about to deliver. The morning of Lily and Jake's wedding dawned crisp and bright. Lily was nervous, but not in the usual bridal way. Her stomach churned with anticipation for the chaos she knew was coming. She kept running through the plan in her mind, making sure every piece was in place. As guests began arriving at the venue, everything looked picture perfect. Jake and Lily had chosen a beautiful location, paid for, ironically, by George and Linda's deep pockets. At first glance, nobody would have suspected the simmering family drama waiting to explode. Jake had arranged for subtle security. Early on, the only visible staff member was a polite woman with a guest list, checking names. George and Linda arrived looking smug, convinced they were about to witness their golden plan. Amber stayed away at first, following George's instruction to avoid being seen until just before the bride was supposed to appear. According to George and Linda's scheme, Lily would remain hidden until the music played. Then Amber would arrive in her own white wedding gown and stroll down the aisle first, basking in attention and cameras. Only after Amber had her bride moment would Lily be allowed to appear. But Lily and Jake were one step ahead. Hidden from view, Jake's real security, a tall man who looked more like a bodyguard than a wedding usher, took his post at the entrance. He was under strict instructions. Under no circumstances was Amber to set foot inside the venue. He'd been promised a generous tip for keeping the situation discreet but firm. Just before the ceremony, George discreetly signaled the wedding planner to start. Lily's bridesmaids, who were in on the plan, obediently filed down the aisle, pretending not to notice the tension. Meanwhile, George stationed himself near the entrance, ready to escort Amber when she arrived in her stolen spotlight. A friend of Lily's, who wasn't part of the bridal party but had been prepped for this exact moment, texted Lily to get ready. It was all staged to keep up appearances. Then, the bridal march began. The double doors swung open, and instead of Amber, Lily walked in. George's face went pale. He looked over Lily's shoulder, trying desperately to see if Amber was behind her. She wasn't. George stammered some excuse about something coming up and scurried away as gasps rippled through the room. Meanwhile, outside, chaos had erupted. Amber arrived in a full wedding gown, veil and all, only to be stopped by the bodyguard. He politely told her there was already a bride inside and she must be at the wrong venue. Amber shrieked, demanding he move aside. George threatened to call the police. The security guard calmly offered to dial them himself, explaining he was hired by the couple and was simply doing his job. At that moment, Lily's friend arrived outside and immediately started berating Amber, screaming questions like, "Why are you trying to steal Lily's wedding?" The commotion drew a crowd. Linda arrived soon after, along with more guests, and a huge argument broke out on the venue steps. Back inside, Lily reached the altar, shaking but resolute. Jake's father, who'd been warned he might need to step in, rushed forward and offered his arm so Lily wouldn't have to stand alone. Guests whispered furiously, trying to piece together what was happening. Despite the chaos, Lily and Jake exchanged vows. They were married before George, Linda, or Amber could make it back inside. The ceremony concluded under a buzz of confusion and scandal, but Lily couldn't have cared less. For once in her life, she had stolen the show, and the victory was sweeter than anything she'd ever tasted. When the ceremony ended, Lily felt like she was floating. She and Jake had pulled it off. Amber had been left outside screaming in her wedding dress, and George and Linda had been exposed as the manipulative, scheming people they truly were. But even with the vows exchanged and the rings on her finger, Lily couldn't completely relax. She kept noticing guests slipping in and out of the reception hall, clearly wanting to catch the spectacle unfolding outside. Whispers buzzed through the room like a hive of bees. But out of respect, or maybe sheer disbelief, no one dared bring the drama directly to Lily. Eventually, Jake disappeared for a few minutes. When he came back, he leaned close to Lily and whispered, "Your sister is still outside throwing a tantrum. Your dad tried to punch me. Security's holding him back. It's glorious." He grinned, barely able to contain his glee. Outside, Amber had collapsed onto the pavement, sobbing and wailing that Lily had stolen her moment. George and Linda tried to salvage the situation, telling guests that Jake had agreed to let Amber walk down the aisle first and then betrayed them. But people weren't buying it. Whenever anyone asked for proof, George and Linda stammered and insisted that Jake had told them not to put anything in writing. Jake seized the opportunity to play the shocked victim, gasping, "Why on earth would I agree to something so crazy? Do you have any texts, emails, anything?" Of course they didn't. In a poetic twist of fate, guests started recording bits of the meltdown on their phones. Videos circulated among Lily's cousins and extended family. Footage showed Amber screeching on the ground, her white gown pooled around her like a spilled meringue, while George and Linda yelled at security and various family members. For Lily, who had grown up being called a liar and a troublemaker, finally seeing her parents and Amber publicly exposed was the sweetest revenge imaginable. When it was clear they were outmatched, George and Linda were escorted away by security. Amber had to be physically hauled up off the ground and shoved into the back seat of George's car, still sobbing hysterically. Back inside, Lily and Jake carried on with their reception. Guests, perhaps out of pity or pure entertainment, threw themselves into celebrating. People were extra kind to Lily, offering hugs, compliments, and even sly congratulations for handling things. Jake, who couldn't resist a bit of mischief, cracked jokes and played the role of hero, keeping the mood light. In the days after the wedding, George, Linda, and Amber bombarded Lily with calls. Jake insisted she ignore them. Eventually, Amber sent Lily an unhinged text rant, blaming her for humiliating the entire family and accusing Jake of being a two-faced snake. She even claimed Jake had secretly been in love with her all along. Jake practically fell out of his chair laughing and said he wanted to frame that text and hang it in their living room. Jake gathered all the missed calls, angry messages, and threats and sent screenshots to the family group chat. He calmly explained that Lily was being harassed and that they wanted peace. He begged the extended family not to share their honeymoon destination, just in case George, Linda, or Amber tried to show up and cause more chaos. To Lily's shock, her cousins and aunts and uncles rallied around her and Jake. They promised to keep her parents and Amber in check. Since then, the couple has enjoyed blissful silence. Jake sometimes jokes that he wishes Amber would try another stunt, just so he can verbally eviscerate her one more time. But Lily, for the first time in her life, doesn't look over her shoulder anymore. She married the love of her life, exposed the people who tried to keep her down, and finally stepped into a future that belongs to her alone.